Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. We made it to season 2, Dave. Not quite sure how, but we have.
Kind of season one and kind of a half, isn't it? We're still
Yeah.
yeah. If we make it to December, maybe we'll see.
So Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester here to break down all of the action on opening weekend in the British Basketball League. And there was a lot of action to be had, all obviously in the cup. The interesting thing about this cup structure is we've seen it in the past where teams use it almost as preseason, but this year of all years, where there's been so many issues with visas and all of that sort of thing, it seems like everybody is having to do that because players are either coming in late or they're not here. So even the teams like Leicester and Newcastle that you expect to have big pre-seasons and be ready to hit the ground running, they've struggled with the visa issues in the same way everybody else has.
Yeah, it's different with, visa, COVID, travel, everything. It's not just a question, certainly I know from Newcastle's perspective, it's not just a question of getting players, it's a question of getting teams to play against. In the past you might have flown a team over from Ireland or whatever, and that's been very, very difficult. So you have a disjointed beginning of the year basically, and it's always the same. The teams that in May are far better than the teams in September.
Yeah.
Because they're new teams, they're new groups, people have been haven't played for a significant period of time. So the immediate comparison as to what you have now, as opposed to what you had back in May, the better teams, will always be a negative one. Because it just takes time for players to gel. You've got a lot of players as well now, particularly Americans, who didn't play last year.
Yeah.
So, and then you're talking about people who, athletes who probably haven't played a game in 18 months or more. And that's a big thing. So what they really need before they're judged is a pre-season, and that's exactly what they don't have.
Yeah. So let's get straight into the judging them. Let's massively overreact.
They're all crap.
Let's start out on Friday night. First game on my slate here is Sheffield Sharks 64, Cheshire Phoenix 71. The thing that caught my eye at the beginning was Cook and Tuck both starting for the Sharks. Now, Atiba did that a few times at the end of last season, but for the 2 years that they've been on the same squad, 70% of the time they don't start together. It's usually one or the other.
No, he's got four guys this year. He's got Cook, Tuck, Nichols, and Delpesh. And Nichols is clearly now a four-man. He's not playing him at the three at all. So he's got those four guys, and he's trying to find combinations. And I think it took probably Delpesh about 15 minutes to assert himself as a starter, because he was, particularly effective when he was in the game. And in the second half, in fact, Cook and Tuck hardly played. So, yeah, it was an interesting one bringing both those guys back, because neither of them, you wouldn't describe either of them as being having standout seasons last year. They're effective, they do what they do, but they weren't guys that you were kind of screaming out thinking, we've got to sign these guys. But there is a priced-in advantage from familiarity, and you might get a more talented guy coming in, but if he hasn't quite got the headspace right, you've wasted the year that you put in with the guy last year. So that's probably the logic of that, a little bit of consistency. Doesn't matter quite as much with it being the cup early on, in relation to hitting the ground running. But it was interesting that he started with Cook and Tuck, and Ritino is basically playing the two guard now. Whereas
at the other end of the floor, the Knicks, a lot of talk around them over the summer. Looks like a nice roster. They started out well in this game, jumped out first 7 points of the game, had a nice early lead.
Yeah, they've picked up over the summer. They've picked up some kind of some British players who were worthy of further opportunities. Dangakodo played limited minutes for London last year, but played them well, and so he has a bigger role. Obviously, when Worcester, what's happened to Worcester has happened to Worcester, and McSwiggan's gone back to Cheshire, where he played under 16s, and Kyle Carey as well, who developed last year, is starting for them as well. So they've tried, and they brought in Teddy as their floor general. It'll be their issue, I think, down the line might be shot creation. They're going to have to create shots. They've got the sign name and right, the ex-Leicester guy, to give them a little bit of scoring. They're going to be a solid team, but they're also missing an American big guy at the moment, so you can't overly judge the whole roster yet. The biggest thing for Cheshire has been, and was in this game, was Mike Ocherobia, who looks to be in great shape. That's the first thing you notice. I don't think he's as big as he was. He's the same, obviously same vertical size, but he's slimmed down a little bit. I think he's a little bit more athletic. I think he's getting off the ground a bit more, and he's always at the front of the rim. And that eventually wears the opponents down. It didn't really matter ultimately how many centres Sheffield had in this game. Ocherobia was better than all of them.
Yeah. So swung back and forth. Sheffield found their rhythm in the second quarter, really, and then started the second half with the first 8 points, an 11-2 lead, 50-35 up, and looked pretty comfortable at that.
Yeah, and I think in the second half, from memory, Nichols started with Delpeche in the second half, and as I say, the playing last year, that number of kind of little guards, Nick Lewis, the point guard last year initially, and they had Hemsley and Jode Campbell, and this year they really don't have that. They've got the little guard Anderson, but Routinho is basically playing the 2, and the new American Williams and Joe Jr. are playing the 3. That's kind of an interesting. It impacts Routinho a little bit because Routinho's a guy who creates off the catch as opposed to creates off the flat ball screen. What they did well was get into a rhythm, and Nichols got going. And when Nichols is a tough cookie at the stretch 4, you've got, because he's got a step. He can step back and shoot, and at times he makes a game look ridiculously easy. But there are also there are other times where he's not on the floor because he's not what he needs to be. And when he got going with Delpeche's physicality, Cheshire couldn't handle it. But what happened was that the Sheffield bench had to come in, and Forrester's first law of the season is that in the first month of the year, it is a major disadvantage to have 10 guys who can play, because the ability to build continuity is very, very difficult. Now it comes down the line in January and February that it's a great advantage to have those guys because you have injury, and you have that, and you've built them in. But for the first month, you're trying to get everybody in the game. You've signed them, so you've got to give them a shot. You've got to give them a chance. Yeah. And so the bench came in, and it was Cook and Tuck and Joe Jr. I'll say Joe Jr. and Lucian Christophis, who he signed, and I think he kept maybe Williams or Routinho on the court with them, and they just couldn't create a shot. No, they couldn't create a shot. And I think if you go back to the period of time around the 2 minutes to go in the third quarter to kind of 2 minutes to gone in the fourth quarter where the game changed, so a 4-minute period, I think maybe Cook blew a layup, maybe 2 travels, maybe a jacked up 3. They never got a good look. And by the time Atiba came back with his starters, the rhythm of the game was entirely different.
Yeah, 13 points in a row the Knicks had in that little spell that you talked about to go from 12 down to 1 up, and then last 6 minutes, rhythm's gone, shots are not dropping. Sheffield only hit 1 field goal in the last 6 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and it was still, I mean, the game was still there because, Cheshire didn't run away with it. They didn't take it away, but they just ground them down. And eventually, I think Ocherobia's, offensive rebounding, getting extra shots, it just kind of wore Sheffield down. And
the last couple of plays as well, they were down 4 with 30 seconds to go. Williams has 2 free throws. He misses them. And then they come down the other end, and Atiba gets a technical foul. It looked to me like he was shouting at the other bench rather than at the officials, but whatever it was.
Shouting at the table. I mean, I watched it 3 times. I was trying to figure it out because he was trying to put a sub in, and the refs had stopped the game to allow the sub to come in. And I think it was a throwaway comment towards one of the table officials, because I don't think the ref would have been, I mean, I might be entirely wrong, but I don't think the ref would have been that fussed about a throwaway comment towards the opponent. Yeah. If you say something towards table officials, then they have to pick the table officials. I mean, the technical itself, it sounds like a big thing, but it's only one shot. It's 1 point, and the game continues. I mean, the reality.
But it's combined with you got two missed throws, which could have made it a 2-point game, and instead of being a 2-point game, it's a 5-point game.
Yeah, that's right. And they've got the ball. But I think when he missed those shots and the foul was there, I think he knew the game was up. And it happens at the beginning of the year in particular, because teams don't have hierarchies. They don't know where to go to get baskets when they need them. And so you've seen it across this weekend, significant amount of games which have ended up with kind of a whimper where the team behind just has not known where to go to get a basket. And this was another one.
Bradley 20-7 off 7 of 13 shooting. Ocherobia with a career high 19 rebounds, 18 points, and 17, 7 and 6 from Teddy Okirafor as well.
Well, Bradford, Bradley's going to be really interesting, because he was a guy who, at Bristol, he clearly had something about his game, but he was horrendously inconsistent. Then you look at the end of the season, you realise he averaged 15 points a game in 20. Yeah. You're thinking, oh, hang on a minute. And Cheshire must have seen that and thought, oh, there's something in there. And your starting point of building any team in reality is your point guard and your stretch four. If you've got a point guard, you've got a stretch four, you're going to have space on the court. And if Bradley goes for 20, because Bradley can go inside and outside, if he goes for 20, spaces the floor, then they're going to be a very tough team to beat. But I don't think he's going to go for 20 every game. And so getting consistent play out of him could be the determiner. For sure.
As we may discover in a few.
I'm not talking with you know fine well, I know. Yeah, true.
And my stat of this game, that was Sheffield's biggest blown lead since April 2018, up 15, losing the game. The last one was Bristol. They led by 16 and lost by 3 in the end. Let's move on to Newcastle 72, Glasgow Rocks 82, and Glasgow very impressive in this game. Started out really well. The new guys doing it as well, Jordan Johnson and JC Hillsman, an 11-3 run, and they got up early on.
Yeah, I haven't watched this game back. I sat in the crowd and watched it, but I had 3 8-year-olds next to me who wanted lots of sweets. So I was trying to figure out who the new guys were while keeping them happy. And I haven't watched it back because there's been so many other games. Glasgow were far more ready than Newcastle. You could see that. Newcastle had one pre-season game a fortnight ago. It's tough in the middle of the season to shoot the ball well when you haven't played for 2 weeks. It's very, very difficult to do it when you haven't played 2 weeks at the beginning of the season. And 2 of their guys, I think, came in, Fletcher and Shelton came in pretty late. But that said, that doesn't take away from Glasgow, because their point guard was incredibly impressive. He has a good resume. He gave one of those performances which was like, okay, I'm around. I'm here. I'm coming. Their assistant coach, Glasgow assistant coach now, Alan Keane, is one of Ian McLeod's best mates, actually. And they coached together for England under-18s. So Alan will have known Ian's probably more than anything else, which I think will have assisted the way that Glasgow were able to scout Newcastle and defend Newcastle, because they defended them a lot better than you normally expect a team to do first game of the season. And by the way, Alan, welcome to the club of coaches who can stand on the sideline who aren't coaches, just assistants. Don't get a technical, don't get the main guy unhappy. So I would let him in the union, but he hasn't paid his fees. It's not that much of a union. It's just me talking to myself. Anyway, so there's that. The kit, I've got to say this now. The first thing I thought was Glasgow's kit was an abomination. Right. We
don't normally get into that in this.
I know that, but
other podcasts.
I know that, but even still, I'm just going to say they got 5 of the pastiest guys in the league, all Scots. Bunyan, Fraser, Gareth, Fraser, Malcolm, and one of the other guys, Murray Hendry, right? And they're out there in a white, skin tight, sleeved kit, which leaves nothing to the imagination, with orange letterings, which I can't even read the players' names on from 12 feet away with my glasses on. So apart from the kit, they were great. Everything else, no, seriously, they moved the ball really well. Newcastle's defence broke down in the first half, and Glasgow got a ton of open threes. Corner threes, bad threes you don't want to be giving up. And that kind of continued through the game. Teams are going to have a scouting report for Jordan Johnson. Because if you're not going to have a scouting report for Jordan Johnson, he's going to beat you. And I'm not even sure as of yet quite what the scouting report is. The only knock on them, I think on Glasgow might be down the line, where else are they going to get shot creation from? But that could be the knock on most of the teams this year in relation to, ability to move the ball off the dribble. But no, they were really good. Elijah Menny, well, he's a very interesting player because I don't think he's made a shot this season. I might be wrong, but he impacted the game in multiple ways. 6'8", long arms. At one point, he kind of caught an air ball in midair, turned around and was above the rim and missed his dunk. Blocked shots he shouldn't block. He gave me a flashback to a guy called Cephas Bunton.
Oh, right, yeah.
At one point, but he was like, Plastic Man, arms everywhere. So he's going to be an interesting guy to watch throughout, because he's something different to what's in the league. A real athlete, kind of an X Factor guy who does different things. But ultimately, it was Jordan Johnson who ran this game. In relation to Newcastle, their defense was a major problem. Offense, it's always going to be difficult, but defensively, you can't be giving. Glasgow only made 9 of 34 shots, and to be honest, the ones they made were wide open. When Newcastle were able to string some decent defense together, they actually could get stops. They probably benefit. They like what Shelton gave them. Shelton gave them 16 and 11 in 18 minutes, basically fresh off the plane. That's always encouraging. He also probably leads the league in chest bangs. So I hope he's got a kind of a tough sternum, because he wouldn't want to injure himself that way. The rest of the guys, again, basically it's a new team. It's Fletcher and Defoe and a new team. So they've got a little bit of work to do, but I think they've got enough talent there. They just got to figure out some of the X's and O's and figure out what defensively and what they can give up and what they can't. But Glasgow would be really, really impressive. They look like a well-drilled. They play 5 out, so it's one of the hardest teams in the league to guard, because basically Fraser's one of the best post players in the league, and yet he never touched the ball in the post. He was all out there setting screens, popping for the 15-footer. And that meant that it was very difficult for Newcastle to get any realistic help defense there, and that allowed Johnson to take over. And then Jack Donnelly came in and probably fulfilled the role that he is best at, which is off the bench. 6 of 6. It was a big load down low, and impacted the game very positively for his team. So yeah, deserved win.
They had a 13-1 run in the third quarter that put them up 12, and they were pretty comfortable after that. Bunyan hit a couple of threes. Lead got out to 21. It was at that point that I was wondering, when was the last time that Glasgow led Newcastle by 21? And I don't know the answer. I could guess, but I don't know the answer.
There was a game in. I can actually probably help you with that. I think, well, there was certainly a game the night before my wedding.
When was that?
That would be 2006. January 13th,
be after that.
2006. Okay. They got beat, but they got beat. Jeremy Hyatt was playing, and obviously I remember that because obviously it was my wedding, but obviously I went to the game.
Yeah. Obviously.
Yeah, obviously. And I think there might have been a game where in the trophy beginning of the season, where Glasgow won a game by 24 when they needed to win by 25 to qualify.
So my best guess, I had the one I could find was December 2017 was 19 points, but they didn't get to 21.
That must have eliminated that from my memory.
They won by 22 in January 2008. Everything after that was Newcastle wins, basically, because they dominated them for ages. So I'm assuming it was January 2008. Sorry.
That must have been a league game. I can't remember which season was it. Anyway, okay, I'll live with it. Can't remember it, but there you go.
Interesting stat I pulled out on Corey Johnson, by the way, because he obviously struggled for his first game up in Newcastle, 0 of 6 from the 3-point line. 53 games in the BBL, shoots 36.6%.
Yeah,
average 3-point shooting. He has only 4 times shot over 30 and under 40% from the 3-point line. So he's feast or famine. So
Right.
what I'm saying to Newcastle fans is don't worry about the 0 for 6 this week, because next week will be 6 for 10.
Well, oh yeah, and that's the thing. That's why I don't think Newcastle are overly troubled by it, because they've got shooters who the right guys are shooting the shots. Corey Johnson shooting threes. If Louis Sayers is shooting threes, even Carl Williams shooting threes. Carl Williams shot 42% last time he was in the league. So those guys, the right guys are shooting shots. Their shot creation wasn't quite as good as you want it to be, but again, Fletcher's playing with two new big guys he's never met. So Vincent and Shelton, he doesn't know where they want the ball in the screen roll, if they're going to pop, if they're going to do that. So I think they've got a little bit of time to figure things out. But it's tough, so they're going to have to work hard.
Yeah, 3 assists for Fletcher, which is
well, a lot of guys missed a lot of shots as well.
Yeah, true. So let's move on to Surrey Scorchers 85, Barking London Lions 86. It was the Barking Abbey team, obviously, the London Lions' second team, who went through because of COVID protocol. Now, no excuses here. Surrey should win the game. But what I will say in defence of Surrey is they had no Davis, no Lawrence, no Gilchrist, and no Hamrick, who presumably will be the four of the starting 5 for as long as Gilchrist and Lawrence are on the team. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think the fact that they lost the game is actually the biggest thing. It's the way they lost it. On the Surrey thing, it must be very frustrating for their supporters, because they have everybody in this dog training with them in the summer. But when it comes to starting the season, you've got 2 guys who haven't got national clearance, and you've got 2 guys who you've just announced last week who suddenly picked up injuries. And we're getting to the point with Andrew Lawrence. When's he going to play? He needs to play, because he didn't play that much this season with London City. So
and speaking to Creon, they weren't expecting to play Teo that week because he was struggling with a bit of a hip. He had a great game, by the way, and also I don't think Kalen had trained all week either.
Yeah, he didn't look. He was 2 of 14, so that's right. But what really, I think, what troubled them, they looked out. If they're not hurt, they looked out of shape, because they got the last 5 minutes of that basketball game, and they're up 10 or 11 points.
Let's just spin it through to that, because it wasn't a great deal in it. Teo then 8 points, 13-4 start. They get up 11. They're still up 11 with just under 5 minutes to go. It's 81-78, and you think, they've weathered the storm here. Harrison had a great game with his 5 minutes and 28 seconds of BBL experience that he has that none of the rest of his teammates had. And you think they've seen it through, but they just collapsed, really. Sorry,
they collapsed. And if you watch the last 5 minutes, Barking didn't have to make a shot. They did not have to make a tough shot. They got transition layups, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, where some of the Surrey guys are not back across the halfway line. A couple of them are bitching to the referees. They got the little diagram sideline inbounds UCLA play, whereby basically they didn't pass a cutter on, open layup, no help side on the other side. They just capitulated, and somewhere along the line, every basketball team and the kids from Barking did what they're meant to do. They played hard. They kept playing. They ran the stuff that they've been coached. They've got an excellent coach who's coached professionally. They ran everything. They did everything that they're meant to do, and they didn't. Eventually, they pushed on that wall, and the wall fell down.
Yeah.
And if you're pros, that whatever happens, that can't happen. You've got to get back and make it play. You can't be turning the ball over and complaining to the referee in the last 4 minutes of a close game. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. So that was what worried me a little bit. Obviously, as you say, the team is only the players they've got, and they've got 4 more players or 5 more players. So there'll be an entirely different unit when those guys come to play.
Yeah,
but you don't want that seeping in.
The other thing is, we talk about COVID protocol. They've had to play their B team, blah blah blah. But what in some ways it's better to play a team that is used to playing with each other and together than sort of like they did in the cup final last year, where they had half a team and they were having lineups that they hadn't played together. This was a full team playing a proper game in the way that they've
Yeah.
been, the way they played the next day and would have played the week before. And
Yeah, I agree, and as I say, the Barking Abbey's a great program. It's been a great program for a number of years. Like Gardner was at James Veers there now. They create good players. Kids regularly go across to America and succeed, come back to this country and play as well. You know, you're not going to get, and what we've got now in this country with places like Barking and Charnwood and Myerscough and places like that, is we do have elite factories which are investing in proper proper coaching for kind of that cohort of individuals, that kind of 16 to 19 age group, preparing them for America. So the detail will have been there, you know. The coach James is a coach, is a pro coach, and he'll have had his guys wound up, and they're playing the biggest game of their lives as of yet.
Yeah.
You know, so everything is lined up. But my point is that, you know, there has to be some resistance from some guys have been in relation to that, you know, to say, no, look, it don't matter what's happening. You're not beating us.
So let's just get to the end of it. So first of all, Brandon Chuya and Zamuka Welch, and I hope I pronounced those right, scored 10 in a row between them to make it a 1-point game with a minute to go. Surrey had the ball 35 seconds out of a timeout, and the play they ended up with was Caelan Raftopoulos driving to the basket. And to me, I don't think anybody would draw up a play for the smallest guy on the court to be driving to the basket. But what that did was he got his shot blocked, and that gave an easy score the other way. Whereas even if you had a 24-second violation or you throw it out of bounds or whatever, you're forcing them to come back down and run a play against you. You're still up one.
Well, they were totally discombobulated because, as you say, there were 4 guys basically flat underneath the foul, down the foul line, so beneath the level of the foul line. Caelan on the top. Nobody came to set a screen. There was no ball reversal. There was probably 5 or 6 seconds on the shot clock. And it wasn't just that Caelan went to the basket. Caelan went to the basket to his left and shot, attempted to shoot basically an 8-foot running, floating left-handed hook. Now, Caelan's been in this league a number of years now, probably a decade since he was at Worcester. I've never seen him try and shoot that shot. Occasionally he steps in, he shoots a little right-handed push shot. I've never seen him go straight down the middle. Now, whether that's because there was nothing there, whether that's because their heads are just all gone and he's trying to make something happen or whatever, but it's totally against anything I've ever seen him do, whether it's a lack of respect for the other guys, but he got his shot swatted. And it was because the other 4 were under the foul line. It was a layup.
Yeah. Bradley Caboza ran it back for a layup. So then they come down again, and this time they get Caelan in his more natural territory, shoots a 3, misses it.
Yeah.
We'll give credit to Jameson. I thought it was a bit of a lucky bounce from him but it ended up in McLemore's hands, and he lays it in with 7.2. And then we come down the other end, and I just thought Jameson, I'm not quite sure what he was doing defensively.
No. Right, first game rookie. I have no idea what he was doing. It was interesting because they called a timeout, and Creon took Caelan out and put Dean Wanless in. And I mean, I like Caelan as having the ability in a 7-second game situation, having Caelan with the ability to actually harass somebody and make them dribble to the left instead of having a straight line drive. Would I think it'd been my choice, but anyway, he put Dean Wanless in, and that meant that, as you say, the new guy, Saquon Jameson. He ends up. He's basically a power forward from what I can see. He looks like a really solid power forward. He is. He ends up matched up on, and Barking Abbey or London are playing with 5 guys who are basically, from what I can see, under 6'6". They're all athletic. They're all relatively skilled. They can all put the ball on the ground. They can all drive. And he ends up matched up with somebody who's got a step on him, basically. Yeah. And he allows him to get a step on him because he goes and guards him 35 feet from the basket. Yeah. What then happens is, because he gets that step, Dean Wanless steps in late. It's a clear foul, block. Hale's underneath that. And shrugged shoulders all around, and everybody's thinking, what's going on? And the kid steps up and he knocks him down. Then, after he knocks him down, there's 1.5 seconds left. Jameson takes the ball out of bounds and just flicks it into Caelan's hands, because Caelan subbed in by then, 85 feet from the basket. And what you've got to do is you've got to throw it long. Hope that someone can catch it or something. And It just seemed to me that the last 5 minutes of that game was a mental disintegration from Surrey. Now, as I say, they've got extra players to come in.
Yeah.
And, international clearance has been a bugbear of everybody's for however many years.
Yeah.
It never gets any better. So you're not going to hold them to that.
They're standing there as well. That's the worst thing about
standing
it.
there. No, really,
like the visa thing that most clubs have suffered with is one thing, because they're stuck with no passport in wherever they live. But these two guys are on the sidelines. So.
Yeah, and basically, just so people understand, if you've played in a different country last year, there's a little a FIBA racket, basically, which means that every club who's signing a player who's played from another country has to pay 100 euros or £100 to that other country for them to confirm that they're allowed to play in this country free of any encumbrances. And the same works the other way. So GB Basketball can also claim that money for people that we send abroad, but that's not as much now due to Brexit. And so but the problem is that it's reliant upon the federations where the other guys have played. So if those two guys, for instance, think one of them played in Kosovo or Albania or something like that, if the Albanian federation isn't working its fax machine or its email, then you can put an application on Monday and they've got 7 days to clear it, which means you don't get cleared.
My insider information is that the Albanians said they had cleared it and it stuck in FIBA somewhere. But
indeed, so what a mess, a totally unnecessary mess, and it frustrates everybody every year. And we try and work around it, but it was always a big bugbear of mine. Anyway.
Right, from one 1-point game to another. Leicester Riders 84, Bristol Flyers 85. Flyers without Marcus Evans, who on paper looks potentially to be their best player, perhaps. Well,
Tell me, because I don't know who Marcus Evans is. Sorry, I've missed that press release.
Used to sponsor Ipswich Town, I think. Well, let's have we'll wait and see. Well, let's get him in the country and see what happens. But an interesting game this, in that Leicester started and finished the first quarter really well, got a double-figure lead, looked like they were ready to pull away with it, but Trajan Jacob and the Flyers made just enough shots to hang in there in that first half when they were struggling a bit.
It was weird. It was a weird game. It was weird watching Bristol because, Andreas has had for the last 7 or 8 years very systematic teams. At times almost too systematic, whereby the opponents have been able to figure them out. And it was almost like he'd been struck by lightning or something, because he's saying 2 guys and they're just going, they're just attacking. And there was none of the delicate or contrived sets or anything like that. They were just letting them play. It was great to watch, because Elijah Menny was one of guys I was out, kind of my eyes went, oh. Trajan Jacob was the other one. Plaster, I think at one point he kind of jumped up, made a shot, did a somersault, got back on his feet like, like Simone Bills. And I'm looking at him thinking he's 6'5", he's left-handed, he shoots it to the ceiling. Yeah, it makes 38%. And I'm thinking, gee, what's this? This guy's different. Him and the point guard, who's Miller, who's a little bit more conventional, but still impactful, really kept them in the game. And that's what so you guard and then you stretch 4. And Josh Rogers was a stretch 4 and ultimately not done shots. Hats off to Plymouth, hats off to Bristol, sorry, because I thought they were playing in a way which really suited the talent that they had. Ref Thomas Edwards is attacking, Josh Rogers is popping. The big guy Simmons did enough, I think, to show that he's got something to give. And just overall, I thoroughly enjoyed watching them play. And it's not always been that way.
Well, what they did with this one was hang about. When it wasn't going their way, they did enough to just stay in the game. And if you can do that, at some point it swings back your way. And it was in the fourth quarter, they had 10 in a row, and suddenly 5 minutes to go in the game, they were up 5 and in a good spot.
Yeah, it was Leicester are in the 10 player situation I described before. They got 10 players, and even with 3 or 4 games abroad, those guys, Gino's not played, Zach Jackson's not played, so they had 7 or 8 guys and had a couple of Loughborough students playing, and everybody's happy and everybody's got their roles. and then suddenly you bring in the MVP and everybody's role changes, and then and there's less minutes for everybody, and suddenly they're all looking for their own little areas, and that's difficult to manage in September and October.
Made more difficult by the fact that at the end of the first quarter he's a +16 on the plus minus, Gino.
Yeah, well,
and it's one of those where he's not played, but he's come in, and they're so much better with him on the court, and it's
but you know, we're getting to,
and he looked a bit fatigued towards the end of the game as well. So you've got that thing of where do you play him?
Yeah, I think Fletcher was the same in Newcastle. He came in on Tuesday as well. You know, I think, you know, ultimately you can't put Miles in the legs if the Miles aren't in the legs. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, this going to be interesting going forward with Leicester, because, you know, the whole thing we talked about with the Crandall and the plus minus. You know, you have to get to the point where, well, hang on, these other guys can play. So what is it why is the flow of the game changing so much? You know, is it because of, you know, Gino is quite ball dominant, and therefore everybody else is playing off him, and therefore they're not ready to kind of step to the next step when he's off the court, because they shouldn't be losing those minutes as often as they do, or certainly as often as they did last year as well. So that's an interesting thing to look for going forward. But the bigger thing, well, the two bigger things I noticed with Leicester is, it's the first time I can remember that Rob has started two small guards. I say small guards, Crandall and Mackenzie, because Mackenzie's basically a point guard, you know, where he's played. And it's always been a guard and a slasher, be it Heron last year, Zach Jackson, Naaman Wright, all of those guys, even Tyler Bernardini, you know. So I'll be interested to see how long that experiment remains, because he's got Zach Jackson there now. And you know, that was a very nice fit last year when they had he's got Loving is basically a William Lee clone, probably not as good defensively, probably a little bit better offensively. And obviously Whelan has been signed to take the place of Corey Johnson, or Whelan or Adekoya. So basically, you know, that kind of Crandall Jackson axis was very useful last year, but then you have to find minutes for Mackenzie and Washington off the bench, which would be potentially tough, because then you're sitting Crandall down, and we know what that does to the plus minus. So their decisions they're good decisions, but they're bad decisions. You know, people say, I've got so many players, they're good decisions to have. They're not really, you know, because they're tough, because you can get drowned in options. And the second thing is starting the two small guards, I think, does affect them defensively. You know, I'm not sure Mackenzie's perfectly suited to defending two guards in this league. I think he's more suited to defending point guards. And certainly they gave up more points against Bristol than you would have expected in, you know, given the depth that they've got, the energy that they've got, the length that they've got. They don't have Jamal Anderson anymore, who was the kind of the plaster. So you got a lot of guys there who are trying to find their way and figure their way. And someone's going to have to kind of step up to that role, be it, you know, Adekoya, or be it Whelan or whatever. Because that's how they're going to get on court at the end of games. You know, Rob's got so many guys to choose from, and so it became a bit of a shootout.
Let's get to the end of the game. So Leicester, after having struggled to score, then Mackenzie got to the free throw line. That was the thing that sparked them. Then Nelson Henry, a tough score, Adekoya in the corner, Loving, and they were up. They got up. Simmons tied it, and then 30 seconds to go, Rogers, who didn't miss a shot all game, hits a big three, and it was one of those where they actually wanted an M1 on the play. And given that Jacob hadn't made a free throw, it wasn't a guarantee that it would have been the go ahead. But instead, they got 3 points from Rogers, which did put them in front.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I thought the end of the game was, from memory, Crandall got tired because he threw a couple of passes he wouldn't ordinarily throw and turned the ball over into the basket a couple of times. And then I think after Rogers made the three,
he went to the basket looking for a foul.
Basket, he didn't get a call.
No, he didn't.
I don't think he. I think you know, that's just a little bit faster than he ordinarily would. I think a little bit less control than he ordinarily would. Whether it was a call or not, I don't know. I'd have to look at it back. But I think my impression was that he was fatigued at that point. But as I say, you know, it was 30 minutes. You're coming in, played 30 minutes. You're coming in from not having played for 6 months or 5 months. So it's kind of understandable. And then when we got to the timeouts, didn't we?
Yeah, then they call a timeout. They advance the ball. It comes in. They get it in. Leicester quick foul, because they'd only committed one foul to that point, so they were needing to bang, bang, bang. They actually lost about 3 seconds as a result. And then you know, I teed you up on air that for this 5-second violation. Now, to be fair, it wasn't on the advance, so they had no choice. It was always going to be on the side.
I mean, I think they had to advance the ball, and I'll tell you why. It was because it was off a turnover. Now, you can't run the base. If it's off a score, you can run.
Yeah.
And running the baseline is a massive advantage to getting the ball in bounds, because you can run, your 5 seconds. If you're stuck under your own basket up 1 with 9 seconds to go, then the nightmare is that you turn the ball under and you can't set your defense, they score. And I think you've got to take that away. You can get away, you can be a little bit more comfortable about it if you can run the baseline. So they had to do that, but they went into kind of brain fog, Bristol, because the first time they ran the set perfectly. The guy popped, there's 2 places you can go. We've talked about it before. You pop up to the halfway line. One guy comes off the screen, pops up the halfway line. The second guy breaks to the near corner, and you're throwing the ball to the corner. So you're not throwing the ball through any hands. You're not lobbing the ball over the top. You're not giving any chance. But the first time they threw it to the near corner, and they were able to throw it back, I think. And
to the halfway.
Came off, and the foul came off. Then you watch the second time. Firstly, everything starts late. So instead of setting the screens before the ball comes in bounds, the guy slaps the ball and it's 2 seconds before there's any movement. So you've immediately lost 2 seconds. Leicester have seen what's coming. So they front the guy who's coming up high, and nobody else moves. 3 Bristol guys literally stand there. Nobody breaks to the corner. Nobody makes a target. And all he could have done better would have been to maybe throw the ball off of Leicester's guy's leg. At that point, but you don't want to really do that either, because
because if it bounces off his leg and goes that way, he runs back away.
The whole thing can go. It's too many uncertainties, So Bristol brain freeze at that point, which gave Leicester a chance, and then Leicester in a great play. And the problem with the play was it left Connor too open too early, because they ran. I think it was Wheeler. It was maybe one of the guys ran down towards the near corner. Gino came up to get the basketball, and Connor sprinted across the court to the far corner. 2 guys end up with Gino. No one ends up with Connor. Totally lost. But because Gino's not expecting Connor to be that open, he takes a dribble. As he does, he wants to assess his options to see what he's got, to see where he can go. And taking that dribble, he realizes Connor's wide open. He throws him the ball, but that one beat allows the guy who's at the top of the key to recover back to Connor and at least get a good challenge on the shot. And it was still a makeable shot. But it was actually a play that worked too well. Just left him too open.
It's one of the. I don't love a 3-point shot in that situation, but he was so open that
that's what Gino. That's why Gino took the dribble, because he wants to assess what's there. How am I going to attack who's open that side? But it was the one time where he just needed to poof, poof, and it was gone.
And you would expect Connor to make that shot as well. I think if you played that game again, he makes the shot and Leicester win.
Made plenty of those shots against us.
Well, the classic is the one against Cheshire where he hits down in the corner on the buzzer and everybody goes wild.
That was only a 2-point shot. But
it was only a 2, but
the classic I remember was when we were up 11 at Sports Central, and with a minute and a half to go, managed to miss about 6 foul shots, and then including one with 3 seconds to go, and then our whole team. And I hope Paul Goes isn't watching this. Our whole team decided that we just stand and let Connor shoot one in. Because he was young at that time and no one really knew him. We'll stand, let him shoot one in trail, and took it to overtime. And I think we still won the game, and there may have been a brawl afterwards. But anyway, it was fun. But no, he's too good. You can't, if you've got an open shot to win the game, you live with that.
So let's move on to the Saturday game. Bristol Flyers in action again. 84-75 victors this time. First time they've gone 2-0 since their debut season in the BBL, 14-15. No Kingsley Okoro for Plymouth City Patriots, and there's a fine for whichever of us says Raiders first. There was really nothing in this. Crazy first quarter, 30-32, and I looked that up. There's only 7 times in the last 12 years that both teams have scored 30 points in the first quarter.
You know something? When that happened, I nearly sent you a message, but I knew you would look at it anyway. So that's true. It was a layup drill. in the first quarter. Bristol, because they were happy from winning the last game and they were all in rhythm because they played the night before. Plymouth, because they were fresh and it was a new start and everyone's getting opportunities that they probably wouldn't otherwise have got had all the Turkish lira not disappeared. So, you know, you've got now guys in Plymouth now who are really going to get a shot. You know, they're not going to be coming in to be 7th, 8th men on the BBL bench. You know, they're going to get the chance to really push themselves forward. And obviously, just so people understand, when you start a new company, which is what the City Patriots are, you know, that before you can bring American players in, you have to be assessed as suitable to sponsor immigrants by the government and get what's called a sponsor's license. And that means they do a due diligence on you, on the company, to ensure that it's an appropriate deal. You have to go through all the steps. So that could take months. So that's why they have no American players at this point. But this gives them the opportunity, as I say, to look at some guys like Joe Hart, and obviously Denzel's come back, and Liam Carpenter's come over from Germany, and give those guys a chance to show. What they unfortunately desperately miss is somebody that's like a 7-foot behemoth in the middle. And unfortunately, he got injured in pre-season. He was sat there injured in pre-season, and that's absolutely gutting for PJ because, you know, they are AD, athletically deficient. At this point in time, you know, they got a starting one guy, Cameron King, who's probably 6'6" at centre, who did okay, to be fair. Sean Shelton was probably 6'6" and about 9 stone, wet through. Is at again, it's not a bad thing, it's just what he is. You know, he's playing the 4. And he, again, they did okay. And then LVC and Denzel, and Denzel's probably their only athlete. You know, they got shooters who can score. Joe can shoot, Liam can shoot, all that stuff. But they're going to need to be able to match up with the athletes, unfortunately. And that, I think, showed as the game went on. It became harder and harder for them to create shots. And Bristol, even though Jacob got injured, so I hope that's not the last we've seen of him. I hope he's all right because I want to see more of him. Bristol, you know, were able to run their bench a little bit, and a couple of the guys who they brought up from the second team didn't look out of place. And you know, Plymouth had a couple of little runs, but you never felt that they quite had enough to get back into it. And it's going to be a tough start for them. They're in a tough group. Obviously, they've got the 2 games against Surrey, which will probably dictate whether they go through or not. It's also interesting because I think, you know, if you're in the North group, you're going to be salivating at the thought of winning the group and getting a home tie against either Plymouth or Surrey at the moment, the way things are. You know, so it creates an interesting dynamic.
But then Surrey could have another 4 players in the lineup by the time.
That's the point. Yeah, you don't know. I agree. Plymouth could find a couple of Americans if their licenses come through. So the whole thing can change very quickly. But that's where we are at the minute with them. They just, I think, just athletically deficient. They were well coached. They ran what they meant to run.
So let me ask you this question, because it was a bugbear of mine. It happened in the Newcastle game and it happened in this game, where it's 9 or 10 points and the team 9 or 10 points up has the ball on the final play and dribbles it out. In a cup competition where the points will matter or might matter, not just in the head-to-head, because like you say, if there's a team in the group who everybody beats, there's quite possibly going to be multiple ties that will be overall basket difference split.
Yeah, it could be the difference between a home game and an away game in a semi-final and a quarter-final. Yeah, it's, if I'm putting it generously, you know, you're happy you've won 2 games if you're Bristol. You know, Glasgow, you're absolutely delighted to have beaten Newcastle. But I know that because I was sat behind the Eagles bench, and for some reason, whoever gave me the tickets at the arena has sat me right behind the Eagles bench, which is probably not particular. I could have done with being a bit further back. But I know that the Eagles, Ian was pushing the guys to get back. He wanted down to 8, he wanted down to 6. You know, he's aware of this. But Glasgow, you know, Glasgow won in Newcastle, so that
doesn't happen often, does it?
And so
even tonight, Leicester up 16. Now 16 is more than 9, so maybe I have a slightly.
I can get away with that a bit more because I don't see Leicester and Surrey being. I know what you're saying,
but it might be the multiple tie thing.
I get
again, what this comes from is I've done a lot of Euro Cup over the years, and it's the same format with 6 teams, top 4 goes through, points difference comes into it, and I've never seen a team up 9 or 10 dribble out the ball in the last 20 seconds like
but
that.
I remember, yeah, I'm getting some brawls in tonight. 2010, Kelvin Hall, Glasgow, first game of the season. It was one of those trophy cup groups with us, Glasgow, and somebody else.
It was Falkirk or somebody, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, somebody Troon or something, somewhere,
Yeah.
somewhere off all the B roads in Scotland. I don't know. And so it was Eagles in Glasgow, and it was a double overtime game, and it was Mike Copeland, who was in North Carolina. We won in double overtime, and about 4 seconds to go, we're up by 8 or 9, and Fab goes and tries to lay it in for that very reason. And Mike Copeland fouls him, and straight out of America, yeah, disrespectful, man, you can't be doing that. And Sterling's on the bench saying, no, man, no, it's not that. And so, and obviously, you know what Fab's like, he's not taking it back with step. No, you're competition, know your competition. We're playing points difference, and I'm right in the middle there trying not to get hit, So it's always been in people's minds. Sometimes it just is. It's the other thing is if your team is stopped, right, and if you're a coach and you suddenly say go, right, you risk someone pulling a hamstring or someone not looking at the ball. It's just too much, so it's probably preparation beforehand. But then again, you don't really want to be saying to your team, look, guys, when we're 1 by 10, just keep playing.
You
know what I mean? So I give them a pass, but I wouldn't give them a pass this weekend if it happens again.
Yeah. The one difference with Euro Cup is the overtime points don't count in the points difference.
Quite right,
just
too.
0. And that makes more sense.
Yeah, I've been there before as well, where teams are trying to play to get into overtime so they can win by some. Yeah, and I think the BBL's not sorted that problem out yet.
No, nobody has. It's the same in like international competition. It's only Euro Cup and Euro League that don't count the overtime points.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Sunday's games. Even London Lions brackets full team 90. Plymouth City Patriots 61. They went out. I didn't watch this game, obviously, because I was doing the Leicester game. They go out 20-2 up. I assume they thought the game was won, and Plymouth came back with a 17-1 run, and then 23-7 to finish, and that looks like it, really.
Yeah, well, it's a brutal schedule for Plymouth.
Yeah, it is.
Brutal schedule. To go to London at 4 o'clock. On the Sunday, just to find a nicely non-COVID rested team up there against you, having played at Bristol on a Saturday night. When you're playing without your big guy, you've got basically 7 guys that you're playing. And as I say, London may be the longest, most athletic team in the league, and certainly deepest. So London were ready to go, and I think the first 2 plays of the game were dunks for Kelly. One in a screen roll, and one off a dump down pass from Jordan Williams. And they weren't just kind of uncontested dunks. It was like the kind of dunk that only someone who's 7'1" can make. Oops, you're 6 feet from the basket, pick up, bang. And from that moment on, I think Plymouth knew that they were in a bit of a hiding and nothing. But it's an opportunity for those guys. That's the thing. It still remains an opportunity. So they are going to have runs. They are proud. They just, if the game's over 20 minutes, they've got a shot. But if the game's over 40 minutes, it's just too much. And eventually, London wore them down. So I watched bits of it, but I'll be the same. I didn't watch all of it. Again, Ubiaro was quite impressive getting to the basket, showing his athleticism. And Carpenter actually stepped up and made a couple of shots that I saw, but I didn't watch all of it. I've got no comment on London at all because I'm not judging them on that. It's their first game. Justin's still not playing. They started Reece at the point guard as opposed to Jordan Spencer or Andre Lockhart, which I think is interesting because I'm not sure if he's going to be the point guard going forward. It'll be interesting to see if he becomes a 2. Started Jordan Williams as well at the 4, which is probably a good fit in the BBL. But apart from that, they've got a lot of guys that we know about already. Ward Hibbert, Lockhart, Spencer, Tawia, all those guys, and the Americans. But we'll see when they're properly tested.
Yeah. Well, let's move on then to Leicester 96. Surrey 80, and obviously Surrey still with the same lineup they had on Friday night. I mean,
Yeah, I
this was
watched a bit of this, but that was mainly for the commentary.
yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a fascinating shootout between Loving and Teo in the first half.
Yeah, it was
Both
kind of.
making
I
early
watched the
shots.
first quarter. I
Mm,
watched the first quarter because it just kind of pipped London v Plymouth for me.
yeah.
Just as I say, and yeah, it was kind of you shoot, I shoot type of thing. I thought at one point, I thought Leicester were going to shut them down. I think in previous years, or maybe later on in the season, Leicester might shut them down, but they didn't really. Theo got going, and Macklemore got going a little bit, and I think you win by 16, you're not concerned, but there's you're not wanting to give up 80 points to that Surrey team if you're Leicester. As I say, all these games are with the rider of it's the first week of the season. So, and that's right. But, just going back off previous years, there's times when the first week of the season, Leicester held a team at 50.
Yeah.
But again, that's a point about having moving parts and not everybody necessarily knowing or having that, everybody's trying to carve a way for themselves in that team, and that doesn't necessarily mean defensively in the first 2 weeks of the season. You're looking at just where you're there, So that's an issue, but nothing too troubling for them. Sorry, yeah, they came back with a bit of pride, I thought. Certainly Theo came out with a bit of pride and kind of led them, which is credit to him. Robertine's a big guy. I'm not sure if he's I'm not sure how he's going to defend in space or how he's going to handle the BBL and all the travel, because it's very, very difficult on big guys' bodies. And they need their Americans in for us to properly judge them.
Yeah, Macklemore, particularly in the second half, was good.
Well, again, that was actually, he scored on Mackenzie again. That was kind of thing, kind of a bigger two guard, and Mackenzie's kind of a smaller two guard. And it's kind of why I say they're going to have to make a decision on that Mackenzie Jackson thing, because I'm not sure which way it'll go. Mackenzie's been there pre-season, but he's been there starting as a point guard pre-season, playing with Connor. So that'll be interesting. Loving can score. I mean, he appears to be an even more laconic version of William Lee. Even kind of just as long, probably not quite as defensively athletic on the weak side on blocking shots and things like that. But he's one of these almost NBA guys who he knows the spots to get to. When he gets to his spots, he scores. There's a lot more individualistic talent in Leicester than there has been, I think, for a while, because they've always been sort of systematic offensively, getting shots, getting the shot spectrum right, shooting threes, getting the ball in the post, all of that stuff. It's kind of, as I say, Whelan and Adekoya and Loving and Mackenzie, they're probably a little bit more off the cuff. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out as well. I'm a good Leicester watcher. I spent so many years watching them, working out to beat them. It's always, they intrigue me because there's always a background to there's 10 years of background in relation to how they're developing and what they're going to do differently, which you don't get with some of the other clubs because they've got new coaches or a new team every year, and or they're trying to kind of jump themselves up into the next echelon. You don't get that, but you've got that with Leicester, so it's always interesting. A little bit like watching Newcastle, watching London. It's intriguing.
Let's move on to Glasgow. Speaking of commentary, Philip Brown on commentary. Shout out to Philip. I only heard a minute of it, but
you can hear his intro. His intro went on for about 4 minutes.
Did
he wrote a 2,000-word essay for his intro.
He said he had no time to prepare.
You're joking. He's sponsored by Keir Starmer. Oh, it was great stuff. No, congratulations. He had John Bunyan next to him, which was good. I like John. He's quite very laconic and very entertaining. And they had the lovely blue kit on instead of the abominable white one, which was also good. You can tell Philip off, though. He did mention that one of the players was from the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and Minnesota, when of course it's Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Wow, shocking.
Shocking
that he would get their geography wrong on that.
I know that, and I noticed it, and he didn't, so I'm disappointed in him, and the P45 is in his post.
Well, I know he listens, so I'm sure he'll contact you on Twitter. But not just because I only saw the last 2 minutes of this game. That I want to spin it through to the last 2 minutes of this game, but also because when I went back through the play-by-play, there was never more than 2 shots in the game all the way through until the last 2 minutes of the game.
It was a very disjointed game. It was a BBL bounce back game for both teams. Sheffield bouncing back from losing at home to in a game which they probably should have won, and then Glasgow bouncing back from winning in front of 2,500 people in Newcastle. And there's a different, and when you're dealing with rookies and it became very clear early on in the Kipper Nichols showed up. Kipper Nichols had a hell of a game. He was on guard, probably 25 points.
23 and 10.
Which maybe his career high in the BBL. And but it was the way he got them. He got them when his team needed them. Glasgow basically, Jordan Johnson turned up of the starters, and the rest of them didn't. The rest of them weren't ready. And by the end of the first quarter, because I watched quite a lot of this game, so I was interested to see how good Glasgow were. What my impression was from Friday was the start of the first quarter. They had 16 points or 18 points at the end of it, and Johnson had 9 points and 2 assists. Basically, I think there was a Hail Mary 3 and a Fraser offensive rebound or something like that. So basically, everything came through him. And Gareth very quickly, I think, kind of figured out what was going on, because the Scots played a lot more. Malcolm was in from many early. Fraser played a long way, and he came in early, and he made 4 threes, and he's playing as a stretch 4 as well. Now, and so he was playing off Johnson. Johnson was looking for him very well, but they never got into any real rhythm at all. Nothing like the rhythm they'd been in. The bounce just wasn't quite there that they had on the Friday night, and I don't think the game plan was quite there either. I think they had a week to focus on Newcastle and how to stop Fletcher, and probably a day to look at Sheffield and a few guys that they'd never seen before, and it was one of those games whereby I just felt Sheffield had enough. Delpesh, again, that it's very much kind of old style basketball with Sheffield. They're throwing the ball into Delpesh and letting them go to work. Anderson is quick and he's savvy. I'm not sure about his shot making. That might come, or we might see a bit more of that. He knows how to run a team. He makes the right plays most of the time. What they still kind of do. And Christophis, to be fair, he came in off the bench, made a couple of threes, a couple of foul shots, gave them some really good minutes as a backup point guard, which they need. I'm still a little bit conflicted about Williams, the new guy. He's very athletic, he can score, but he also shoots shots he probably shouldn't. And I don't know how much patience Tiba's going to have, for him getting to the rim and chucking up a shot which doesn't hit the rim because he's off balance or whatever. That's probably happened 3 or 4 times, which is more than it should. And Rutino is, as I say, he's playing the 2 guard, and I'm not sure he's perfectly suited for that. I think he's more of a kind of a swing man who's better playing the 3 and catching and attacking off that. So their shot creation is going to be an issue. If Delpesh isn't there, or if Delpesh isn't getting them cheap points on the offensive rebound, then Anderson's going to have to create a lot of shots for that team. Sorry, Delpesh and Nichols, because Nichols did a great job creating shots. And in the game, this is one of the games I was talking about before, whereby it kind of just died a death. It died a death because Glasgow couldn't make shots.
I didn't see Glasgow score, and I didn't see Sheffield make a field goal.
And Glasgow had decent looks, but they had decent threes. Jordan Johnson, I think, eventually got a little bit worn down, but he is guy he reminds me of is guy who played for Sheffield about 6 years ago called Gerald Brooks.
Oh right, yeah.
Brooks was left-handed, but he was like a bowling ball.
Yeah, he was bouncing off people.
Bouncing off people, yeah. And Johnson, I think, is probably a better version, a more savvy version of Brooks. Not quite as athletic, but knows how to get to his spaces and knows how to. I think he's perfect for that team because they got a ton of shooters, and he can get in the lane. He knows when to finish. He knows when to kick. So he's on early season MVP watch, very early season. But I got a hell of a good impression from him. And Glasgow just didn't have enough for everybody else. And the game, as I say, the difference in the game is the motivation, I think, from Sheffield needing to win the game because they lost badly on Friday. and Glasgow and their younger Americans feeling good about themselves, having accomplished what they accomplished on Friday, and not quite being ready for the challenge at home today.
So let's go to the final game of the weekend, the North-West Derby. Cheshire 72, Manchester 78 after overtime. And this is probably the two teams who created the most interest, I think, in the pre-season. And a first look at Manchester, obviously Cheshire's second game, but their first home game. And it was low scoring, but it was a tight old fight.
Yeah, it was, and it's, Manchester's a little bit tough for me to assess because I haven't got a figure on any, I haven't got an angle on any of the Americans yet, and I don't know even sure that Lloyd's got much of an angle on them because he didn't start any of them,
he didn't really finish any
didn't
of them
finish with
either.
it. I think the one of the guys came in.
They had one. I forget who it was now. They had one. They had four
left,
Brits on the court at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think they were all on the court at the end. And the lefty came on for overtime. I can't remember he's got a strange name, an unusual name. Sorry, not strange. It's harsh.
Artisan.
Yeah, so Lloyd was playing the guys he knew, who I think thought would run the system the way they did, both at the beginning and at the end. Can't really comment on the Americans as of yet. There's a couple of times that Dan Clark was getting frustrated with a couple of them that I could see. They have a really nice core. In theory, they've got a number of tools. It's all based around Clark. He's playing him as a stretch 5, whereas in Spain he's probably played a little bit as a 4. And in the BBL he's a stretch 5, and that's spot on. He's probably going to make more 3-pointers this year than any guy in the league. Under over is probably a 4 a game for him. People think they're guarding him when they're not. And if you haven't got a plan to guard the pick and pop, then he's going to kill you. And I don't think Cheshire had much of a plan.
At times, they didn't look like they had any plan on the pick and pop.
I mean, he has to be the first. You have to make him dribble, and you have to be relentless with him because he's just too good a shooter. And the worry was actually for me for Cheshire was that the first 2 looks he got were good looks, and he missed them. And that then he's not going to be missing the rest of the night. In fact, he's probably the greatest big guy shooter we've ever had in the UK.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
I was thinking about it before, and the only guy I could think about coming close was a guy called Martin Clark who played for Guildford.
Yeah, that was where I was just about to go.
I don't know if they're related. But that's before the 3-point line.
Well, no, the 3-point line was there, but it was still a bit gimmicky at that point because he played sort of late 80s into the early 90s, and the 3-point line came in at about 84. But it was still one of those things where, he did. He had a beautiful jump shot. One of the great shooters.
Yeah, you knew he was good because Cadle took him everywhere with him.
Yeah.
Basically. But yeah, so apart from that, Dan Clark's obviously extended that with 3.9 in the way the game's played nowadays. And so that's the first thing you have to respect with him. The rest of the guys, they played off. He didn't play Jordan Wheeler much in the first half, but he played him down towards the end. I think their ceiling is probably going to be defined by their Americans and how quickly those Americans can kind of assimilate to what they have to do, because they play in a certain way, and it's the Barking Abbey thing, about you see those guys running the same plays that Barking were running on Saturday, on the Friday night, the UCLA off the inbounds, all that stuff, and you're looking at it, and I like what they've got. Just as I say, their Americans will be the kind of the difference. And the way Lloyd coached it today, he coached it to win the game. He coached it to play with the guys he knew. Quite interesting that I think both coaches, but certainly Manchester at the beginning of overtime made substitutions, which isn't always the case. And he took Jamel out because and put Artisan in, and they got some more offense out of that, which was an interesting move. And Cheshire again, they come off a great win, and they were a little bit flat. Bradley, as we talked about, as you knew, I knew, really didn't establish himself at all. No. And then they were reliant on Wright to make some shots at the end, which he did. And Jules made a couple of ridiculous
8 turnovers, though. That would be the thing. For Naaman Wright, he had 8.
Naaman Wright, yeah. Well, you see, the thing with Naaman Wright, this is an interesting thing because I would be amazed if he had 8 turnovers in his whole career at Leicester. Because in Leicester, he was in a certain position. He was catching and shooting. He was catching one dribble pull-up, attacking the rim, doing what he had to do, making the plays he needed to make. Now he's got a far greater role in relation to shot creation, because Teddy's a table setter primarily, who's going to help other people, and Neyman Ray has to attack, and the spacing might not always be perfect. And so he's going to have those growing pains in relation to turn the ball because he's doing things he didn't do at other times. They need him on the court, because it's tough because, Okafor and Dangakono are basically point guards.
Yeah.
Josh McSwiggan is a 4, and a stretch 4 probably, and Kyle Carey is an athlete, but they need that, they need somebody who's going to be able to get them a shot in the half court. And, asking Mike Ocherobi to have 2 games in a row like that is different. Now, they're still waiting for their American big guy to come in, which will give them a little bit more depth as well. But I really think that, Bradley is the key for that team. Bradley plays well. They're going to be a tough cover. If I was doing a scouting report on them, he would be the first guy. We don't let this guy get off because he's one of those guys who can go for 2 or he can go for 25. And today he went for 2 and they didn't quite have enough scoring to get them home.
Incredible shot by Dangakodo to tie the game.
Awesome defense by Jack Hudson. I mean, I'm looking at Jack Hudson. He must have got in front of him 3 times.
Yeah,
kept his hand straight, made him go up, and somehow he made the shot. I mean, just a crazy shot. And
then the way he
go on.
I was about to say the way Clark had shot, you'd expect him to make that 3 at the end there as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're getting Dan Clark's shot to win the game that you delivered it. Also, it was interesting. The coach took Jack Hudson out for that play, put Will Saunders in, so he put another shooter on the court. And obviously they were going to run it through Dan, and if anybody cheated too far, he was going to throw it across the court to Will. So that was an interesting little wrinkle. Those were the guys.
In fact, Saunders ended up with the ball in his hands on the buzzer and had a 3 as well. But that was a bit of a that was a bit hopeful rather than the previous one. But in overtime, Manchester scored first 8 points. Clark had 4 of them. Whelan had 4 of them, and that was pretty much the game. And then a big dagger 3 at the end by Steele.
Yeah, I mean that was interesting because Josh Steele, he kind of had that in his game at Surrey, but he was far from the finished article. He wouldn't have been the guy who'd be getting the ball at that time. He was always probably a little bit more of a slasher than a nail knockdown shooter. He's been away to Spain for a couple of years. If he's come back, with the intestinal fortitude to take that shot off the dribble, he managed to work himself a mismatch with Max Swiggan, I think, off a screen. And
because I must admit, when he took it, I thought, I'm not sure that's what and then it goes in. So every shot that goes in is a great shot.
Well, that's right. And if it's first game of the season, then you've got a mismatch and you're comfortable in your ability to knock that shot down. That's a great sign. It's better that he takes it than he defers. We want British guys to step up and to make players. Well, you can't just give the ball, he's on the court, the coaches put him on the court, the coaches having faith in him, he expects him to make the plays, and he did it. So that was an impressive play. They've got, I think they're going to be sneaky good, Manchester. A lot will depend on Clark's health. And again, 6'10", big body, traveling around the country. Probably what I'm guessing 33, maybe 34.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
So, the BBL really has got a history of kind of spitting up and chewing out big guys once to get to about big, long guys. So he wants to get to about 33, 34, 35, just because of the mechanics of being a BBL basketball player, the floors that you play on, the warm-up, all that stuff, the traveling, all that stuff. So if he can stay healthy, then he is just an absolute focal point for that team. He's great. It's great to see him in this country. It's great to see him in the league. And we looked at that game today, and we had probably 8 guys starting who were British, who were most of them out of London. Okafor, Carey, a couple out of Manchester. Whelan, Steele's out of London. Dan Clark, Dangakodo, McSwiggan. There's a route there. and it's going to come. And we talked about Brexit. It's going to come, whereby, these guys make themselves, good enough to be part of winning teams. Then they're going to get the rewards. Difficulty is that only got 10 teams in the league. That means you've only got 5 teams who are going to be winning. The 5 of them are most likely to have a losing record.
Yeah.
And no coach wants to sign players who aren't contributing to being winning teams. So there's a real level of competition there, I think, not just within the teams and the teams, but also between the British guys now. Between the difference between Patrick Whelan and Josh McSwiggan and Lewis Sayers and then the guards and Jordan Spencer and Jules Dangakodo and and Connor Washington, and I think that can only be good. I think that can only be good. I think I can only raise the standards. Cheshire were pretty smart this off-season because they went and got guys early who they thought they could build around. Now, the test will be whether or not they're good enough to take them to where they want to be. Because ultimately, last year, Bristol, I don't know if Bristol made the playoffs with Teddy running the team. And I don't know if, and Jules only played, 10 or 12 minutes. And Josh McSwiggan was in and out for Worcester. He played some games, he got injured, he didn't play other games. But they've got the opportunity. Same in Manchester, Josh Steele got the opportunity. Hopefully Ulf will come back as well in due course. So that's going to be really encouraging, and it should be really entertaining to watch those little battles kind of play out over the season.
It certainly should, and I think before the internet gremlins get us again, we should probably call it an evening. So thank you very much to everybody who's listening, and do make sure you share it and like it and all that stuff that people say at the end of podcasts. And Dave and I will be back next Sunday night to break it all down once again. But for now, goodbye.